For example, these judges who let people go 10, 15 times. For example, in New York, where DAs, there's no cash bail, there's catch and release. It's literally an IOU. Hey, will you come back to court even though you committed armed robbery? Yeah, I promise I will. Free to go, and they murder somebody. The left needs to fix this. We can't, because you don't have the same political violence on the right, and you don't have the same revolving door of crime in red districts. These are facts, and it's not working.
Steven Crowder obliterates this woke leftist asking to name even one Democrat who has not accused the right of being fascist, leaving him in complete silence as Steven Crowder continues to destroy the left in this college debate, bringing undeniable facts that the left is aggressive, violent, and radical, and the only way America can tone down the violence is for leftists to hold themselves accountable. Let's get in.
Name me one member of the Democratic Party in a national position of leadership, one who's run for office, either been president, vice president, or ran for the office, who hasn't accused our side of being fascist, of comparing us to Hitler. Name me one.
I mean, this is tough for me to answer because I'm not like super familiar. I couldn't even name that many
don't exist.
Political leaders, but I'm very certain if I looked hard enough, I would find Democratic leaders who have not called other people fascists, who have not called other people racist. I have seen a lot of them, and again, I've seen on social media, and like obviously I've seen the usual suspects doing it. But
like Biden, Kamala Harris, Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer. Every single one of them has lobbed the fascism accusation against Donald Trump and his voters.
I agree with you, and I've seen that. I'm just saying there are 530-something members of Congress. I am 100% sure that there is a Democratic one there. That
I'm sure there is one.
Well, right. I just don't know their name because I haven't.
But you can't point me to a single person in the right. Go Donald Trump, Vance, all the way down, who've said, hey, by the way, they're never going to relinquish power. The enemies are fascists who can't be dealt with at the ballot box. You can hear Donald Trump say shitty things.
Specifically, but I've seen comparable things said from Donald Trump.
Like?
I can't remember off the top of my head. But he has definitely not been the model of rhetoric. And again, part of this rhetoric, I mean, it's politics. It's people appealing to their base. It's people appealing to some of the extreme members. Because also, you got to remember that most people don't even come out and vote. It's like 30-something% of people who've come out and vote.
It depends on the year.
It depends on the year.
I think it's been closer to 50 in recent years.
The people who vote are usually tend to feel very strongly and are tend to be more extreme.
Sure.
So these leaders, they, from a practical perspective, have to appeal to these more extreme voters, which is why it seems like it's a higher percentage of these parties on both sides which have these extreme views.
I don't think
that's the case.
But assuming I'm not lying, right? Would all those polls reflect?
I don't think you're lying.
No, but I'm assuming I'm not lying. But let's assume that those polls exist, right? Let's assume that you take this QR code and you go,
I assume they do exist.
Damn,
I just don't know if they're representative. Difference between that, you could poll 100 people and you can poll a different 100 people. You can poll
how many polls would you need of self-identified liberals versus self-identified from left-leaning polling sources? How many would you need to go? And I think you've already agreed that it's predominantly coming from the left. Mm-hmm. I guess at this point what we're talking about is, okay, if we both agree that there is more violence coming from the left right now, right now, and I think we agree on that.
Well, more political violence.
More political violence from the left. Yes, sure. Right now. I think we agree on that.
Yes.
It begs the question, why? Right? Mm-hmm. And I don't think that it's productive to kind of both sides that, because it's not a both sides. It's a disproportionate percentage on one side. Also, I think, if we both, for example, you and I can find common ground. I think this has been hopefully respectful.
I think so too.
You seem like a very nice gentleman. This right here, not listed in the stats, right? Because right now the media also goes out and says there's more violence on the right wing, which obviously you don't.
I mean,
you're
I
not buying.
Seen that.
That's not registered as.
I'm not like watching.
No, but that's not registered as political violence. Isn't that crazy to you? Cato.
If what you say is true, then yes,
it is true.
That should be registered as political violence. I agree.
It's not. Nor the Summer of Love, the George Floyd riots, none of those deaths, none of the arsons, the January 20th protests where people were arrested right after Donald Trump became president, none of those included as political violence. The problem is, and you say, and I hope that we can find common ground. I hope we have an off-ramp to some kind of civil upheaval, genuinely. But when one side gets backed into a corner where they need security to go out and express their opinion for sitting at a table, when one side says, hey, hold on a second, we are effectively being targeted and hunted if we are public figures, or, for example, even if we're not public figures, if we're working at an ICE facility, we're working at a police precinct, and something needs to be done, and people go, no, it's both sides. And then you have the media saying, actually, it's the right who's more politically violent. You back them into a corner, and I think you know what the end game is there. And so I hope that you do spend time.
I don't know what the end game is there.
The end game there is if people are at the receiving end of political violence and it's gleefully celebrated thereafter, and then they are accused of committing the political violence, they're going to start not just defending themselves, they're going to start fighting back. And I hope it doesn't come to that.
I hope they fight back peacefully or in the proper channels.
You can't ask them to fight back peacefully if they're being killed in record numbers. That's the issue. If they're being killed and assaulted in record numbers, and that's the reason for this, is we need to deal with this problem. We need an off-ramp.
So what's your solution to the political violence seemingly coming from the left?
Well, I can tell you this: there is no solution until there's a structural changes to the makeup of the Democrat Party. In other words, you can't have over 60% in poll after poll after poll supporting some kind of political violence. You can't have the Summer of Love in those riots. You can't have the Tesla bombings. You can't have Charlie Kirk and people coming out and people in the Democratic Party saying, well, even though I condemn the violence, he was hateful. He wasn't. His rhetoric. That needs to change for us to be able to find common ground. It needs to come from the left. The left needs to tone down the temperature, and they need to take ownership and apologize, and they haven't. That means the leadership, and that means anyone who went out there and justified or celebrated the murder of Charlie Kirk. There needs to be such a chorus from, let's assume that you're more left-leaning. It's not enough to not condone political violence. You have to be championing that cause in your own ranks, because we're not seeing it. That's the only way.
So you would like to see from the Democratic leaders some sort of condemnation, apology.
Okay, only way.
So
Steven Crowder is 100% right about the majority, if not all, of the violence, all of this chaos is coming from the left. And the only way is for them to do the one thing that, quite frankly, we all know that they will simply not do. I mean, let me know down below, do you think Bernie Sanders, AOC, Chuck Schumer, Pelosi, the whole gang, do you honestly believe that these people are going to all of a sudden have a conscience and come to the table and say, you know what, we were wrong? Because let me know. Let me know what the odds you think of that are happening. Because if you ask me, there is no effing way that is ever going to happen. And it's funny that Steven Crowder mentioned that 60% of the people agreed with, the violence that occurred. Because at the same time, I know a recent poll gave the question to Democrats, would you rather choose as to identify as a socialist or a capitalist? And guess what? 60% said they would choose to identify as a socialist over a capitalist. Matching numbers. Ain't that funny? Ain't that funny? Folks, the majority of the Democratic Party is, it's the lunatics running the asylum. Literally, that's the way they're voting. And they are just pushing the rest of the party, the rest of the people who actually have some sort of a conscience away as they go deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole, because there is no way that they are getting the majority of the people on their side. So this movement hopefully just burns itself out and hopefully doesn't burn everything else down around it when it goes. But hit that like button, notification bell if you're enjoying the video, and if you want to help support the channel, check out the link in the description, and let's get back in.
So you would like to see from the Democratic leaders some sort of condemnation, apology,
accountability.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how do we stop this violent rhetoric, or the kind of rhetoric that's inciting violence?
Well, that would be the left. The left needs to stop it, right?
The leaders can come out and they can condemn it and they can apologize. But assuming these polls are correct, how do we change the 62% who are okay with political violence?
Well, right now, again, this is why the why matters. The reason that you have 62 in some polls, 60 in some polls more, is because of the leadership and the temperature in the Democrat Party. So that alone maybe brings it down to 50. Doesn't bring it down to conservative levels, but it brings it down pretty low. And then the left needs to be on board with such harsh on crime policies and realities. For example, before Charlie Kirk, we had Irina Zarutska, right? There in North Carolina, the woman who was stabbed.
I don't know about that.
White woman who was stabbed by a black man who was released 14 times. Stabbed her on a subway. She bled to death in plain view.
Was that was political violence you're saying? Or
no, what I'm saying is political violence thrives in blue districts where you have catch and release and IOU, no cash bail policies. This guy was released on an IOU, deemed mentally unfit to stand trial by a leftist judge, by a leftist court system 14 times. Do you know the average amount of times that a murderer has been released before they commit a murder?
I do not.
11.
11. I would have to see something on that.
Yep. Again, the QR code will make all of it available. So the left not only foments violence through rhetoric, but then they also facilitate it by soft on crime policies with the same rhetoric, because keeping people behind bars, having actual bail needed to be posted, is considered racism. Every single proposal that comes from the right is racist, it's fascist, it's sexist, it's homophobic, it's transphobic, and now we have people dying. So those two things need to change. Crime policy and the rhetoric from the top down.
Okay.
Do you think that would make a difference?
I mean, I personally support some of the crime changes you're discussing. I guess I do have a follow-up question, which is, you mentioned that...
And there's a QR code, by the way, with the sources.
That an average murderer is released 11 times.
Yeah.
Is there, like, do those murderers commit more, acts of violence when they're released? Is there some kind of statistics on that? Because, like, does that actually lead...
Well, I mean, they've been brought in for serious crimes 11 times.
But are they, when they're released, are they under house arrest? Are they under, like they're not committing more crimes when they're on trial for
Well, I would imagine
right?
between crime 6 and 7, and between crime 7 and 8, they're committing more crimes all the way up to 11. I think we can agree on that, right? That's pretty self-explanatory.
I mean,
this guy was released 14 times, including already committing armed robbery. And this is not the only example. George Floyd.
What about him?
9 times. He robbed a woman at gunpoint with her daughter in the house. This was a serial violent criminal.
Right.
Who had no business being on the streets. I'm just picking it because it's an example of someone you would know.
Right. I mean, I'm totally with, the justice system and
locking them up. If they commit violent crimes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, lock them up.
If you're convicted of a violent crime, then you should be convicted according to, whatever the state's penal code is. And
the problem is the states where leftists are in charge is very soft. You don't need to have any...
But you think the solution to political violence and the problem with the left right now is we need the left and the right to work together on crime policies? No, you don't.
No, not on the... Well, first, on the crime policies, here's what needs to happen. Before that, the rhetoric. The left needs to take full ownership and accountability. Okay? And not just the leadership, but people like you who seem like decent people. We need to see you calling out your own the same way you would see conservatives call out their own here if someone were to be violent. We need to see that rhetoric be toned down and changed completely. We're not fascist, we're not racist, we're not transphobic, we have disagreements of opinions.
I agree with you.
And then as far as crime, we need to go back to the crime policies that we had that worked and the left altered. We don't need to work together. We need the left, these judges, these DAs, to go back to punishing crime.
Here's my question for you. Isn't crime sort of a state issue? I mean, you have state judges, you have state penal codes. These state judges are elected by popular vote. What is the federal government? What can the left even do? What can we even do?
So that would need to come from those in charge in these blue districts. For example, these judges who let people go 10, 15 times. For example, in New York, where DAs, there's no cash bail, there's catch and release. It's literally an IOU. Hey, will you come back to court even though you committed armed robbery? Yeah, I promise I will. Free to go. And they murder somebody. The left needs to fix this. We can't. Because you don't have the same political violence on the right, and you don't have the same revolving door of crime in red districts. These are facts, and it's not working, and people are getting tired of it.
Yeah, folks, like Steven Crowder is showing, it's not a matter of bringing enough evidence to convince anybody. It's just a matter of getting them to look at it and accept it in the first place, because it's absolutely overwhelming. And as Steven Crowder mentioned, look, for those on the left who somewhat want to listen and they want to get mad if people on the right or anyone else wants to tell them what they need to do or whatever, well, understand, they can't fix it for you. Like, this is the leadership. This is the leadership chanting for violence. This is the leadership. Like, first they did it and then the crowd started doing it. That's how this occurred. First it was Maxine Waters. First it was Schumer. First it was Cory Booker. First it was all of them. And then the crowd started getting violent. That's the chronological order of things that happen. So it has to be the leadership chanting back, no, we're not doing this. And they won't do it. They won't do it because they wanted all this in the first place. So yeah, this leftist insanity, it's got nowhere to go, and only they can fix it. But unfortunately, the majority of them are socialists. The majority of them agree with violence, and within their own party, the majority of them are crazies. They're just crazies. And how you fix that, I don't think you can. I don't think you can. I think this is the left just going to its utmost extreme with nowhere else to go. And everyone else is simply being de-aligned from the party, realizing how crazy they are, and finally coming to realization that, like, okay, the right is at least sensible. Like, they're not this. And, it's just pushing the divide even more. But this is the 80-20 doom loop, but it's going to be the hottest before this fire burns out. But thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you thought about what Steven Crowder had to say, completely obliterating this student in this college debate. Thanks again, like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.